苹果走了，特斯拉走了，可口可乐也走了。
Apple's gone, Tesla's gone, Coca-Cola's gone, and Microsoft is gone too. Many people left comments under my last video saying foreign brands should just leave China. But have you thought about this? If all these foreign brands leave, our domestic brands will at least start raising their prices by 100%.
全球四大量商之一的美国 ADM.
One of the world's top 4 grain traders, America's ADM, plans to halt its domestic trade business in China. This news gives me a chill. The industry doesn't look optimistic, and it's hard to see any improvement in the short term. The escalation of the China-U.S. trade war is slowly starting to take effect.
这种外资的离场在越来越多的出现在我们面前。
The exit of foreign capital is happening more and more in front of us. These long-established companies, after over a decade, are just walking away when they decide to. So what we're seeing now is a shrinking market. Foreign capital is withdrawing, consumption is weak, and exports are suffering. This is just the beginning. Just the beginning. When all these foreign companies have pulled out, the difficulties will be unimaginable.
The U.S.-China trade war is intensifying. And facing the cost pressures brought on by U.S. tariffs, more and more foreign companies are withdrawing from China. On May 5th, Mattel, the maker of Barbie dolls and Uno cards, announced that due to rising global economic uncertainty and changes in U.S. tariff policies on products made in China, the company is unable to predict its full-year performance, especially the sales situation during the holiday season at the end of the year. As a result, they have suspended their earnings guidance and accelerated the relocation of production out of China. The U.S. toy market, worth $42 billion, is being impacted by the U.S.-China trade war. Toys in China face tariffs of up to 145%. Mattel is speeding up its exit from China, adjusting its supply chain structure and product mix, and considering raising prices in the U.S. market. Ynon Kreiz, the CEO of Mattel, stated that reducing reliance on China is one of the company's current top strategies, with price adjustments being considered the third priority. Mattel originally expected net sales to grow by 2 to 3% this year, factoring in the tariffs imposed by the U.S. on China, Mexico, and Canada in February, but excluding the new high tariffs on China implemented in April. However, the company reported that first quarter performance was not affected by the tariffs. Revenue unexpectedly rose by 2% to $827 million, surpassing expectations. Yet, due to rising sales and administrative costs, net losses widened to $40 million, up from $28 million a year earlier. According to data from the Toy Association, Chinese factories currently produce about 77% of toys sold in the U.S. Isaac Larian, CEO of MGA Entertainment, which makes toys like Bratz and LOL Surprise, stated that the company is taking action to shift 40% of its production to India, Vietnam, and Indonesia over the next 6 months. This will increase their production there from 10% to 15%. Larian mentioned that MGA may have to raise wholesale prices on products made in China, passing the additional tariff costs onto retailers to protect the company's already slim profit margins. Another toy manufacturer, Denmark's Lego Group, is focused on building a supply network centered around regional production and consumption. On April 9th, Lego announced the opening of a new factory in Binh Dong Province, Vietnam, where it has invested over $1.3 billion. According to Nikkei Asia, the new Vietnamese factory will supply products to Asia-Pacific countries like Japan and India. Lego has previously shipped products from Chinese factories to these regions. The U.S. is Lego's largest market. It currently has no choice but to continue shipping products from Mexico. However, Lego is investing over $1 billion to build a factory in Virginia. It's expected to be operational by 2027 and will be Lego's 7th global plant. High U.S. tariffs apply to any existing import duties on specific Chinese products, including toys and electronics. On April 25th, reports emerged that Apple is accelerating its move to relocate its production lines out of China. According to the Financial Times, although China remains the main production base for Apple's products, the ongoing tension in U.S.-China trade is prompting Apple to accelerate its diversification of its supply chain. Sources revealed that Apple plans to move all iPhone assembly for the U.S. market to India by next year. This move is intended to completely shift the production of the 60 million iPhones sold annually in the U.S. Market research firm IDC shows that Apple will ship 232 million iPhones globally in 2024, with around 28% of those going to the U.S. Apple's move to transfer production faster and more completely than expected signals increasing trust in India's manufacturing system and a continued reduction in reliance on China. Daniel Newman is CEO of Futurum Group, a technology industry research firm. He said, We believe this is going to be an important step for Apple to be able to maintain its growth and momentum. We're seeing in real time how a company with these resources is moving at relative light speed to address the tariff risk. Apple began shifting its supply chain in 2022, triggered by the strict lockdown measures implemented after the COVID-19 outbreak in China. During the lockdown, Foxconn's Zhengzhou plant halted production, causing a sharp drop in iPhone production. The reciprocal tariffs under the Trump administration further accelerated Apple's move to relocate its production base. Sources familiar with Apple's Chinese supply chain have said that Chinese authorities deliberately delayed Apple's efforts to move iPhone production lines to India. Local Chinese governments also met with Apple supply chain partners, warning them not to cut local jobs. Several individuals familiar with iPhone production have reported that, in many cases, China delayed or even blocked the shipment of iPhone manufacturing equipment to India without prior notice. However, Apple has begun urging some Chinese equipment suppliers to set up factories in Southeast Asia. Additionally, 2 iPhone equipment suppliers stated that Apple may switch to buying equipment made by manufacturers in Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan, even though these devices are more expensive than those made in China. The alternative equipment may require up to a year of testing and certification to meet Apple's standards. According to a source familiar with the matter, Apple's partners in India have come up with alternative solutions in some cases, including switching tasks originally performed by automation machines to manual labor. Professor Ye Yaoyuan, a specialist in international studies at the University of St. Thomas, said that if the Chinese Communist Party insists on blocking U.S. companies from relocating, Trump will continue to impose tariffs on China. He said, "Everyone can see clearly now. Pressuring Trump has no effect. It will only bring him back to impose more tariffs on you." Assistant researcher at the Institute of Chinese Political Military Affairs and Combat Concepts at Taiwan's National Defense Security Research Institute, Wang Xiuwen, also believes that the CCP will try to block the shift but will ultimately fail. Wang said, "The CCP will certainly try to block it, as this would not only have the economic and psychological effects from the loss of important to U.S. industries, but it would also lead to domestic unemployment issues, affecting social stability. However, I don't believe the CCP's attempt to block will succeed. Apple is a multinational company, and profit is its main goal, so Apple will find a way to relocate its supply chain out of China to avoid becoming an innocent casualty in the U.S.-China economic war." Foxconn's factory in southern India is Apple's largest production base in the country. Tata Group also became a key Apple supplier through the acquisition of Wistron and Pegatron's businesses in India. This shift is also receiving strong support from Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government, which is offering manufacturing subsidies and tax incentives to establish India as a global manufacturing hub. Apple is not the only tech company targeting the Indian market. South Korea's Samsung is reportedly considering moving its smartphone production lines to India. Google's parent company, Alphabet, is also negotiating with Foxconn and Dixon Technologies to relocate part of its Pixel smartphone production capacity to India. Under tariff pressure, in addition to Apple, many Chinese sellers on U.S. e-commerce platforms like Amazon are preparing to raise prices in the U.S., and some are even considering completely exiting China. Wang Xin, president of the Shenzhen Cross-Border E-Commerce Association, which represents over 3,000 Amazon sellers, told Reuters, "It's not just a tax issue. The entire cost structure has been completely disrupted. This is an unprecedented blow to the entire cross-border e-commerce industry. Surviving in the U.S. market will become extremely difficult." Wang Xin pointed out that tariffs will not only directly increase production costs, but may also cause customs delays and higher logistics fees. Some sellers plan to raise prices in the U.S. market, while others are looking for new sales markets. Brian Miller, who has been selling on Amazon in Shenzhen for 7 years, stated, "If the current situation doesn't change, continuing to supply goods from China to the U.S. will no longer be profitable." He believes production will have to shift to countries like Vietnam or Mexico. Currently, about half of Amazon sellers come from China. In Shenzhen alone, over 100,000 Amazon sellers are registered. According to e-commerce data provided by SmartScout, these companies have a total annual sales revenue of $35.3 billion US. According to data from China State Council, cross-border e-commerce transactions in China reached 2.63 trillion yuan last year. Wang Xin said that these new tariffs will severely impact many small and medium-sized enterprises in China, and unemployment rates may rise significantly. In this wave of corporate withdrawals, one of the world's largest agricultural processors and food ingredient suppliers, ADM, is also leaving China. ADM, along with Bunge, Cargill, and Lewis Dreyfus, is one of the big four grain merchants. On April 14th, ADM stated in an email, as part of a global cost reduction initiative, the company has begun shutting down its domestic trade operations in China and reducing its workforce. ADM announced that its subsidiaries' operations in Shanghai will gradually cease by the end of September, but other operations in Shanghai would not be affected. An insider indicated that layoffs would impact 40 to 50 employees, with only about 10 remaining in Shanghai. A source said the agriculture services and oilseed business teams in China have essentially been fully laid off. These two departments were ADM's largest business sectors. Professor Ye Yaoyuan at the University of St. Thomas said that multinational companies are decoupling from China, and the consequences will lead to devastating unemployment rates for China. He said, if unemployment continues to rise, just like we've been seeing with the massive exit of foreign investment in the past 3 or 4 years, this will be very damaging to China. He further stated that if the CCP continues to confront the U.S., it will only have negative effects on China, causing its international market to shrink. Without places to absorb China's excess capacity, many factories will collapse, leading to economic panic. He said the only thing the CCP can do to avoid economic panic is once again to initiate large-scale construction projects, creating domestic demand through the government. He said China has been doing this since the reform and opening up period, but the problem is how much more domestic demand can you create, and how many houses can you build, and if the houses can't be sold, how long will you keep building? Wang Xiuwen also believes that this will present both economic and political challenges for the CCP. She stated, if the CCP insists on fighting to the end, not only will the economic growth rate drop significantly this year, but massive unemployment will lead to people not daring to consume, causing deflation. Eventually, people will have no choice but to protest on the streets, which could significantly challenge the CCP's rule. Now China's economy is already full of holes, and the real estate crisis is still unresolved, and if we add massive unemployment on top of that, there's no way they can maintain a 5% growth rate. Despite the trade war between China and the U.S. showing signs of easing, and Trump expressing a willingness to negotiate with Beijing, there's no doubt that as the U.S. largest economic and military adversary, Beijing could still face the harshest blows. Market research firm DigitTimes said that the industry shift under the pressure of high U.S. tariffs will center around 3 key areas: moving out of China, moving into the U.S., and China producing domestically. In the future, the global market will be divided into 3 major areas: the U.S. market, the China market, and other markets that are non-U.S. and non-China. The U.S. market will be focused on production in Mexico and low-tariff countries, and must minimize reliance on China. The China market will be focused on domestic production, minimizing reliance on the U.S., and the other markets will be centered on low-cost production countries outside the U.S. and continue to leverage China's supply chain. The 3 supply chain systems will operate in parallel to adapt to U.S. tariff barriers and the changing global landscape resulting from the trade war. In fact, even before Trump introduced new tariffs in April this year, the decoupling between China and the U.S. had already become increasingly evident, with foreign capital already starting to leave China. Between 2023 and 2024, at least 12 multinational high-tech companies have either exited or reduced their operations in China. Fidelity International. By the end of 2024, around 500 employees were laid off from its China division. Cisco. In September 2024, Cisco laid off 300 employees at its Dalian plant, marking the second wave of layoffs in 2024. IBM. In August 2024, IBM closed its R&D division in China. Microsoft. In May 2024, Microsoft withdrew its AI team from China. LinkedIn. In August 2023, LinkedIn officially shut down its localized job platform, LinkedIn Workplace, in China. Additionally, at least 11 multinational manufacturing companies will exit or reduce their operations in China in 2024. Volkswagen. In September 2024, Volkswagen announced plans to shut down its joint venture plant in Nanjing with SAIC by 2025. The plant primarily produces the Volkswagen Passat and Skoda. Toyota. On September 13, 2024, Toyota announced that it would close its subsidiary Hino Motors' Shanghai plant by the end of the month. Honda's second joint venture plant in Wuhan will halt production completely, laying off 2,500 employees. On February 29, 2024, Bridgestone officially closed its production plant in Shenyang, laying off over 1,200 workers. Nissan Motor, in June 2024, shut down its production plant in Changzhou. Chi Hongquan, a senior researcher at Nomura Capitals in Japan, has analyzed that many U.S., Japanese, and European companies are reducing their dependence on China and accelerating their exit due to geopolitical risks. In other words, under Trump's new tariffs, the speed at which foreign capital is leaving China is only increasing. As Dr. Wenxiu Wen stated, large companies like Apple are now very clear that Trump's tariff war targets the CCP, so it's urgent for them to quickly withdraw from China. Dr. Wang said, Apple must act quickly to safely relocate its supply chain from China. Otherwise, iPhones made in China will see a significant drop in market share in the U.S., which will severely impact future revenue. The cost of moving the supply chain is nothing compared to that.